Welcome to the Style and Vibes podcast with me, Michaela. I'll be giving you the inside scoop on music, fashion, culture, and more from Caribbean celebrities and tastemakers across the globe, pushing our culture with authenticity and, of course, style and vibes. Welcome to another edition of the Style and Vibes podcast. As you can hear in my voice, I'm already laughing because Ronnie and I go way back and we have enough jokes for crack. But, you've put in so much, work in this industry from behind the scenes. And I love how you're kind of coming out of your shell a bit, You've been wearing the hat as event coordinator, PR to the stars, publicist, producer, you name it. Like, you've done a lot in the media space, behind the scenes. So and a lot of the great work that you're doing now is really pertinent to the topic that we're talking about. By the time this kind of airs and everyone is listening to it, it'll be Women's History Month. So I think it's an awesome way to start off the month because, in my opinion, I think you are making great history doing it right now.
Yo.
So sorry, I roll my eye to the left, cause me hear somebody I make some sound. I wonder if I'm a picnic. Uh, so welcome, Ronnie. Thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate it for sure.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure. And like you said, we definitely go way back. Sometimes when I do a search to send you an email, the email that pops up, I'm like, oh my gosh, that outlet is not even around anymore.
Yes.
We go way back. And it's a pleasure. It's definitely a pleasure to see that we're both still in the space, but have evolved, and really kind of rooted ourselves and also have become also a voice, one that is actually looked upon as well. So it's really good.
So I know you're going to be shy, but you have a great roster of clients that you've either previously worked with and currently work with. Just tell the people then, come and know, say, you don't want to brag upon yourself, but I want to brag upon you still.
So clients from, previous and some, now, we have Buju Banton, Mavado, Konshens, Shaggy, Sean Paul, Hood Celebrityy, Kabaka Pyramid, also publicist for Damian Stephen and Julian Marley's record label, Ghetto Youths International, which has a host of artists on that label, as well as, two of the Marley, the next generation, Johan and Joe Mercer Marley. I have an artist, Malica, and, just pretty much kind of in a snapshot, the list. There's also Chino McGregor, who also, so yeah, Tarrus Riley.
So how did you initially get into publicist and being a publicist and doing PR work?
So first of all, I was always shy. Never, ever would I think to be in front of a camera speaking or even writing. English wasn't something that I really liked, but, I did fairly well. Always thought I was going to be a 9 to 5er. That's how I grew up. My parents always taught me you need that check either at the end of the week, the end of the month, or 2 times a month. Somebody has to give you a check. There was no option of you going out and figuring out how to make that check. You had to work for somebody and somebody was going to cut you a check. So leaving high school, definitely straight into an internship. Luckily it was paid, and this was for like Department of Environmental Protection. And went into college and started doing internships in hospitals. From hospital, I was like, perfect, I'm going to work in a hospital, and I like HR. HR is where I was doing my stuff. So perfect, I'm going to do that. And it was fine. New York Presbyterian, I was doing recruiting, talent coordinating, and doing, I started to do what it was like introductions for people who are onboarding. After a while, I got the opportunity for a position at Goldman Sachs. And I was like, woo, corporate finance. Sounds interesting. And I'm going to step away now from healthcare. And my manager at the time was like, listen, you sure you want to do this? We'll give you an increase. We'll do this. We'll give you another position. I was like, man, this is it. This is what I want. I want this. I remember going to the orientation at Goldman Sachs, and I'm in the elevator, and this man is talking about his bonus that he just received. So I think I came in February. He's talking about his bonus and the vehicle that he purchased with his bonus. And I'm like, yes, this is what I'm talking about. Um, and about a year and 6 months into my position, here we were. We had now, it was more like an economic crisis. They had to pretty much, I forgot what we were going through at the time in the US, but there was a big cut.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And they were like, brought me into the office, and my position was one of those that was going to be cut, gave me a severance, and that was it. And I didn't panic because I was like, all right, well, you know what? I've been working since high school. Let me just relax a little bit. Let me just, have some fun. With fun for me was always a passion of music, doing shows. Like I recall watching, the some Sunsplash and stuff with my parents and seeing who were the hot artists in Jamaica when they came over, or listening to cassettes when, they would be sold after a certain dance couple weeks or months later. And always having a passion to say, I am not standing on anybody's line. I want to be able to just walk into the show. I just want to be able to go and see who that artist is. So I decided now, I'm going to go to Jamaica and I'm going to keep my own show. But I'm also going to give back to a high school in Jamaica. So cool. Taking part of my severance, I'm a Ghana, Jamaica now. And and this is the thing about when you're young, because you don't really process things the same way. You're not really thinking, you're not thinking of all the things that can go wrong. You're just like, no, man, I'm gonna do it. This is the date. This is what I'm gonna do. Went, look for some venues in Jamaica, found one actually in Mandeville. And at the time, iOctane was like the hottest thing in Jamaica. Every paper, everything. I'm like, boom, he's who I want to headline. So go ahead, do the research, find out who to contact. But I also knew I wanted a live band and I wanted two other artists. Long story short, the date was set. iOctane, iWayne, and an artist by the name of Firekin was going to be on my show. This was in 2010. And throughout the whole process, going back and forth, I just realized that the way that the artist was presented in Jamaica, no one presented them that way, or I wasn't aware of them being presented outside of Jamaica. So unless you're with touch within the roots and in the core of Jamaica, you don't know who iOctane is. So when iOctane decides to come to the US, how many people really will come out for him? How many people really would see him? So after the event, a day or so after, I spoke to his manager at the time and I said, hey, are you guys looking to come to the US? Like, if anything, I'm willing to help with promotion, right? And promoting the artist. And they're like, well, we'll think about it. Octane at the time wasn't really interested, what he said. And then a few weeks later, coming back to New York, I received a call and I was asked to come on board as a part of his management team. And I was like, all right, listen, well, I have no experience, but I am willing to learn, willing to, do what needs to be done in order to get it going. Let's go. And from there, that's where it started, right? As far as now, I was part of the management team. So what it entailed now, I had to kind of research to say, what me to do? You know what I mean? Like, all right, we need a booking agent, but we also need a marketing, like all these things. And basically, I remember it was three. It was myself, this guy, Dev, and Gary. And we would meet and figure out, I just knew that I wanted Octane plastered everywhere. And a part of it was also I hired a publicist. And at the time, doing the person, she was doing the PR and everything, and it was great. But I also knew that at the time, to me, the way that publicists had worked was more like, it was more like a blast, setting up interviews. And I just felt like it had to be some more. There had to be some deeper relationships, because artists, especially from the Caribbean, they needed to have something rooted. Like, you need for a reason to say, yes, I am going to play that song, because we can't always wait for it for Bossa Jamaica. You know what I mean? What is it that's going to make this person play the song, even if they don't know who this is, right? So then I started to do some of that work myself, and taking classes and so forth. And then that's pretty much how the PR side of it landed on my table.
That was a lot, and I didn't even know that story. So I think it's interesting that you were really talking about just taking a chance on yourself.
Yeah.
And I mean, looking back now, do you think you would have taken that same leap of faith that you did to go to Jamaica and put together? Because putting on a show is a big deal. Putting on
Listen,
a show in another country that you're
listen.
based here, but putting it on in another country is a whole different game.
And it's
And ma-
like leaving here to go to put show in Jamaica, and then you know how the side of the road, so you have to put up the piece of board on the light posts, and you have to do. And the person who was helping me at the time, Delroy, oh my gosh, he was just so awesome. He actually made me do it myself, and I'm like, but I'm a woman. Him say, yeah, but are you a keep show? So I would be there at night, putting the board together. He would have me go outside of the car, climb up and fix the board, the signs for the events. And, it was very interesting. It was eye-opening. I remember one time saying, when they said they wanted to do the rehearsals in Kingston, I'm saying, no, me there Mandeville. Want me to come all the way to Kingston and do rehearsal? Not even thinking of the convenience that you have to make for an artist. You know what I mean? I wasn't thinking, I'm thinking about me. Me, I spend my money, you come to me, and then go back where I go. Of course, years later, I'm like, oh, no, 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 no.
That's not how it works. But I think that early part of your career, it sounded like you had a lot of growing pains anyway, in terms of just figuring out. Because I mean, it's probably unheard of today that that would be the path of someone else
That's
coming
true.
up, because no one was saying, okay, they did this event, and that one event was good enough to say, okay, be on my team. There's such a big, you know, recruitment process, and because people kind of understand how what their vision is, in a sense, like for them to trust you with his brand at that time was
That's
a
true.
pretty big deal. But probably in the moment you didn't really, it was just like, okay, I could
Yeah,
do
all right,
this
let's
thing,
go. And you know what? I must say my path into as a publicist has a lot to do with manifesting, which I didn't even know. So I remember in 2005, so mind you, that was 2010. 2005, keep in mind, there was this passion always just to walk in the event. We don't want to stay up on nobody line. And in 2005, I kept an event with Fantan Moja in Brooklyn. And it was, all the logistics. But guess what? The passion for me and the whole underline was just, I needed people, at least for me, it was just New York, to know how dope this artist is. I saw him on a tape. I see him on the show, and once again, I was watching it on whatever, it wasn't YouTube at the time, and he's with his knapsack, and I'm like, this man is just so dope. I need to bring him. Boom. And it was others. So it definitely, I think too, was just this part of like a passion and manifestation that made it happen as well.
So fast forward to the work that you're doing now, and how the industry, how much has the industry changed from your perspective from then until now? Not necessarily from a music perspective, but even as from a music perspective, yes, and from an industry perspective too.
I must say, at least for myself and musicians, definitely the way people get music and how quickly they get music has changed. Um, and how people consume information has changed, right? So before, even from the PR side of it, you still had to do newsletters or you had to do press releases. You still had to do interviews, because they still needed an outlet. Now artists have their own outlet. They just pick up the phone and chat. A DJ can just go in a next artist DM and say, yo, and they get what they need to get. Things are just happening. People can make the connections without the publicists,
Mhm.
right? So that is definitely a difference that I've seen within the music from my side of things.
So, in terms of the music itself, and I'm bringing it up because you contributed an article in the Jamaica Gleaner talking about reggae. Let me quote the correct title upon the people. Them. So it's in the Jamaica Observer. My apologies.
Mhm.
So in the Jamaica Observer is an article titled "Reggae is alive and well, but it's evolving," and I think it's a conversation that I have a lot with guests, whether they're artists or just industry people as well, about the quote unquote state of reggae. And there's always like there's this polarizing thought around um, how reggae and dancehall have evolved, and there seem to be a lot of challenges in terms of understanding how and why. And the golden era that is the 90s is always kind of this litmus test of in terms of standard and quality. But how does that impact how it impacts artists today, and how we as media and people consuming the music, it really does impact. And I think we keep coming back to this conversation because it's like, look, reggae and dancehall are not babies anymore. They're
Yeah.
grown genres. They're their own genres in their own right, you know what I mean? And I think you hit a few great points that I kind of want to break down with you today. But just the idea of reggae evolving, like what are your thoughts around its evolution and how it impacts artists today?
So for me, and even making that statement, I think reggae evolving pretty much is we're so used to, okay, the drum and the bass, right? Um, and I feel as if we are judging the music, this reggae, this genre, based on 40 years ago, right? We now have a new crop of youths who they embrace it, but they also are hearing other type of music and other type of genres, other type of sounds, and they want to make that a part of who they are and a part their creation. And so when I say it's evolving, it's like there is something there. And one thing that to me remains the same is the purpose of reggae music, right? And when I say the purpose, I mean it is the music that shares the pain, it's the music that shares love, it's the music that shares a certain spirit. And to me today, even though that sound evolves, right? So when you hear a Chronics, right? He has some music that gives you that one drop, that beat, that reggae, that bass. But then he also has some sound so that is more of on a hip hop fused kind of vibe with some reggae and the way he speaks. Will we then say he's no longer a reggae artist? Will we then no longer say that he is not reggae? So that's when I'm like, I think for our mind, we need to shift and we need to understand and accept that it is evolving. There
Hmm.
are youths across the world that's doing reggae, but they do it just a little bit different, and we need to embrace that.
I agree. I think it because it has changed and it has evolved. Again, we're also of a certain age group where that golden era is going to be golden because it's the time and the era that I came up in. So you're
Right.
always going to have an affinity. If you think back, your parents and your grandparents, they always
And
have affinity.
always gonna make
Yes,
us feel good. You
yes,
understand? So when we
yes,
hear the Alton or we hear the toots, like it's always gonna make us feel good because for us,
yes,
even though we may not have grown up in that time, we
yes,
remember what it felt like for our parents when we
yes.
saw our parents dancing and singing, and so it gives you that. You know what I mean? I mean, as I'm talking now, it's giving me goosebumps just for that reaction when you hear them song they play. Right. And I think what's happening is a lot of the people who are at the table that's having these discussions are still connected,
Hmm.
right? They're definitely still connected. Their heart is still in it. They would love for it to just get back there because guess what? It was a real sweet spot. You understand? And we can't deny it. Same thing with our 90s dance hall. It was a real sweet spot. As we start talking about it, we all get into a space that we're so happy about. We
Hmm.
talk about the dance, then we talk about the gun finger. Like we have so much to share,
Hmm.
right? But even as you and I were speaking before, it does a disservice to the youths today.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I agree. I think it does, and a lot. And even, I have to catch myself at times too, like as I'm talking and having these conversations, because there's such a great catalog. And I was having this discussion with a family member actually, and I was just like, there's good music out there. You're just not being exposed
Yes,
to it the same way that you were when you listen to radio.
yes,
I guarantee I'm like, you don't even listen to radio anymore.
it's
So
true.
where do you really expect to hear new music if you're not even tuning in to the space that you used to hear new music? How
Exactly.
you no longer got shop, go get see 10 CDs for $20. You're gonna
Right.
get mixtape on Jamaica Avenue. Like those things just don't
Fun.
really
Yeah.
exist anymore. So, with the digitization and how people share so fast,
Right.
yes, the access has allowed for the I think the access, just allows people to create things quickly.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't always allow for the quality. And
Right.
I think that that's really my thing too, is some of the quality just is lacking. Like I can hear the difference between a mastered studio produced song and
Mhm.
something where you're making at your bedroom.
Right.
It just has a certain feel, but also sonically, there's just some differences, period, when you do it yourself versus the collaboration. Like you can hear but I'm the only one probably hearing that collaboration just because
Collaboration.
of my ear and my tune to music. But the younger generation, I don't think that they're necessarily missing anything. But at the
Right.
same time, it's like they don't know what they're missing until they're actually exposed to those other things. So I think there's
Mhm.
also the conversation around historical references. You Roy just passed,
Right.
and we've had Sister Charmaine, and I was like, I didn't know a whole lot about Sister Charmaine.
Right.
Like I've only heard her name. I knew Lady Anne, me know Lady G, me know, yeah, like though, but I didn't hear her name. And then when I immediately said it to my mom, she's like, "Oh yeah, she have this," but I didn't hear her growing up. So
Are
therefore,
you familiar with the song?
yes, I had heard the song, but I didn't know. I heard like two or three of her
Yeah.
songs, but I didn't know who she was and identified the music. And I was watching a video with Lady Anne, who I've been in the same space with. She's always at a lot of shows. She does performances, and she was saying, there was no money in this. At that time, there wasn't this full blown industry that there is now. But the challenge, I think that a lot of younger people, even I'm in between that generation and bridging to the next. You don't know what you don't know. And a lot of times they don't necessarily want to not play respect. They just don't know who and how. And it's just like, but at the same time, like Google is your best friend.
Right.
You learn how to do everything else on internet. It takes nothing to go down a rabbit hole and
Mhm.
kind of explore and understand how she has paved the way for you and or other artists. So I think it's kind of like a balance in terms of the history. I feel like the older folks feel like they're losing some sort of history attached to the early days of reggae and its influence, but they're also not in the same spaces, because I'm like, when's the last time you got dance?
Right.
Most time you got party, it's really a wedding or it's an anniversary event. And at that by that time you just want to hear sounds. You're still not in a space to hear new music. So you really don't know what's out there. So
And
you
I
haven't
feel like
moved past this era.
with with the older generation, I feel as if there's that detach, right? For a few reasons. Because, the sound doesn't sound the same, or because we don't understand, or we don't like, or it different. Them dress a certain way, they talk a certain way, they walk a certain way, them smoke outside of the home, them eat. Like there's certain things that we just were brought up not to do. And the younger generation may be doing it. They're a little bit more rebellious. Automatically, the younger generation are looked upon a certain way, right? And you point out all the things they can't do or they're not doing. I remember seeing when Alkaline just came out, and it was just so many people saying, yo, and can't perform. Shamsia went through it too. And can't perform. Yo, she no good. Yo, she can't perform this. And yo, back in our days, we couldn't do this and we couldn't do that. And when we go up on stage and people were sharing clips of themselves or the artists back in the days doing all of that. Now, when you do that, right? And an artist who is probably never really thought they were going to be this big in their career or even exposed to such a large audience. But when you do that to an artist now, what do you expect? There's a resentment there. You know what I mean? And it's maybe not a resentment just for that one person, but it's a resentment for a wide, broad and body of people. Because guess what? You ridiculed me. You tore me down. When I'm just starting, you tried to chop me down before I was able to blossom. You didn't come and say, yo, Earwell, come let me try show you where you do. You see, watch them video here. And when you go, use this opportunity to talk to the audience, bring in something, yo, you can drop in a 90s song on a different rhythm. You can do this. No one schooled them. So guess what? They did it on their own, and they become to build a resentment where, yo, me, I got boss, and me, I got show you. And they do it with such force that when they do, they just keep going on their own path. So they don't have anything to reference. And they don't want to reference anything, because guess what? I had to figure it out on my own. And I feel as if, even with this article and with a lot of the topics, we always get back to the state of, and within the topic of the state of is always the things that are wrong. So like even in the article, I said, I look forward to talking about the successes of, the successes of reggae. I look at the opportunities to actually an artist like Kabaka, who adamant about giving potent lyrics, adamant about giving music with a message and sticking with it, right? I believe he's probably going into his 10th year. And I can honestly say 2020 into 21 was probably Kabaka's best year. Where to the point where, I mean, he's had his hits, but to the point where people are actually looking and he's giving music. That's not easy, but why don't we applaud that?
Yep. Yep.
You know what I
And
mean?
then when other publications, which are crossover, start
Yes,
to do it, then we start to come behind
yes,
and say, yes, I've been XYZ. And I think
exactly.
that's a consumer thing, right? Because I that's also a industry thing too. Like we
Yes,
can't just be into the artist when a different publication
yes,
really gets onto them and says, hey, because essentially, we know the talent that we do have.
mhm,
And rather than continuously pointing out, like to your point, continuously pointing out the things that people are doing incorrectly or what is perceived to be incorrect, because
right, right,
that got
mhm,
everybody
mhm,
have them own way of doing things.
right,
So that's also the idea too. Like you can't just wait for other people to praise
right,
and understand the greatness of
right.
a lot of artists until at a certain point. So I think that you hit the nail on the head, and it's something that I think we as media and consumers really need to think about before the commenting, the bashing, the
Yeah,
entire industry. Like even the idea, the state of it ensues that there's something wrong.
wrong.
And I don't necessarily think that there's something wrong. And I think in your article, you're really talking about it's just different. So how can people really wrap their heads around how much has changed and really embrace where they are or step aside? Like it's like me not block you, but me not step in your way. So it's
Right.
like if you're planning on blocking, just step aside, make the people them go through.
Hmm. Hmm. And funny enough, I really feel that even though, and I put this in the article too, even though many of us are, whether we're getting our music through YouTube or it's, a snippet from Instagram or something that was said on Twitter, right? Um, Even if we're getting our music that way, many of us have songs within the past 3 years that we love and it does something. We clean the house to it. We will sing, and it's something new, right? So I also feel that even though we too are guilty of it, then talk about that. Talk about one song where you discover on your own, however you did it. It probably wasn't in the manner that we're used to. Cause when we know about the song, we know say, yo, one artist now go sing one song where him dip on the plane where it crash. Because guess what? That's like it's feeding, all the great stuff that social media brings, right? So it's feeding the algorithm, it's feeding the hype. But I think many of us find songs that really connect and is really still good, right? So even for us who our parents, whether it is a coffee, make we talk about it. You understand? Let's
Mhm.
talk about Savannah. Like, there's just so much music I do think that many people are finding and are listening to, but we're just not speaking about it. We're not
Mm.
speaking about those things. We're just kind of a click the like them and go in depth to the ones that we're hearing the negative.
Mm.
So that's what I think also.
Yes. Me just I said yes. For the first time, I'm speechless because I think that that is an important part. Just talk about the things that are good and make the good things go viral
Yeah,
too.
because guess what? No one else can be prouder than you with their
Yeah.
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 You are proud of your children. That's what we're lacking. We're not showing how proud we are of the ones them from our home. We're not showing how proud we are of the, our Jamaican artists. We're basically we go and click on proud of everybody else outside. And when our artists or our children go out and then come back, then we're proud. No, we're supposed to
Mm.
be proud and boast. Because guess what? As we always say, we lick about with Talawa, and we have such a huge body of like artists that is just so awesome. And I think when we do that, the world will then look back. You understand? Don't get me wrong. There are things that we can fix. You know what I mean? There are things, there is management stuff, there is certain things that artists should be doing. You know what I mean? Whether it's stuff like, guys, can we get a website? Can you get certain things? Like there's things that can be done. But I think there's so much great things that's happening that
Mm-hmm.
we're not talking about. So the world is only looking at us complaining, and they will highlight that too. So when I hear even somebody like Sean Paul right now, and he talks about the fact that the reason why he doing this album is because them said dancehall dead, right? And he's doing interviews outside of Jamaica, outside in the world, and they're saying, yeah, so the state of the music, and the suffering of the artists that are not being able to shine and propel. And he's like, wait, but we have such great producers, we have such great artists that's making say, what,
Mm-hmm.
come make we show. And he
Mm-hmm.
collaborates with
Mm-hmm.
all of them, right? So I think for sure, it's just a matter of us even expressing and showing what we like, what we
Mm-hmm.
have discovered.
Show what you like.
Mhm.
That is a gem right there. Because I think, especially in the age of social media, it's easy to criticize and pick on things that are slightly off and or negative. Um, and then as media, a lot of times the gimmicky things kind of just run viral, and that tends to get, and then what happens is you then want to do more.
Right.
And I think that that is not necessarily a great way to, if want cause Pama on that podcast, but it's like if the foolishness keep going, then you're
Right.
gonna keep, if that's what you keep promoting, then that's what is gonna get picked up, and that's
Exactly.
going to become the stereotype of the industry. And there's so many people who are doing really, really great things
Yes.
on the reggae and the dancehall side. But I think we have to, like you said, just continue to show the positive.
Mm.
I think the other aspect of that, and I know a lot of artists don't like to separate the two genres, is the idea that reggae and dancehall kind of growing at a different pace. And while reggae still has its relevance in terms of global messaging and interest, dance hall is kind of still finding itself a bit, because it kind of feel like it's the industry has grown, the rhythms have changed, the idea of rhythms has completely changed,
Mhm.
consumption has completely changed, the sound has definitely changed.
Right.
um and I think the artists are kind of still figuring it out. additionally, I think we equate crossover success of dancehall as the litmus as of importance. Has
Mhm.
that changed, or what do you see there? Because it essentially, I've had this conversation on the podcast before, in a podcast with Odessa and Sean of Reggae Talk Radio,
Mhm.
Reggae Talk podcast, and Odessa of Reasonings from Reasonings with Odessa.
Yeah.
And we were talking about, do the genres get the same fight? And we didn't really leave off anywhere, but we kind of were evaluating the idea that dancehall gets a bigger fight than reggae in terms of trying new sounds, because everyone wants to be nostalgic to a particular sound within dancehall. What are your thoughts?
So, yeah, if we had to pick, just off the top, which one get a bigger fight, then yeah, I would easily say it's dancehall, right? Because dancehall, which is nothing new though, right? They have always, dancehall has always been the music that is the kind of a rebellious, that's going to talk the things them, is going to say some stuff which you can't play upon radio. You can't, you play in, you won't hear it around certain people, right? So hence why that music was in the dance hall, right? Or it was in the dance, because that's where you heard that music. So it kind of was the censored music. So yeah, so I would definitely say yes. Um, but I think on a whole, the when it comes to reggae, and hear what, I'm the type of person that I wish that dance hall was back where it was encompassed into just like reggae, right? So you just have reggae and you just know, so you have subgenres and people would respect that.
Mm-hmm.
Just because I feel like we lose the birth of how dancehall came about, just like how we know how hip hop came about. I think we lose that. Um, so if we had a reggae and then we had this subgenre, I think it would give people a reason to explain why it is that, why it falls right under. I know there's a lot of people saying, yo, we need to have our own this and we need to have dance as a separate genre and stuff like that. But I am one to say that I see it as a subgenre, and I also see it as the reasoning for it and the reason why it need to be that type. It need to talk the things. Dancehall needs to. I don't think we should be censoring it.
Mm-hmm.
Like if that's what you want to talk about, go up on the dancehall rhythm and deal with it. If you want to talk about that, go up on the dancehall rhythm and you understand. So, but it does get that fight, and it gets that fight for the same reason because of what it is. I remember even recently in Jamaica, they were talking about he didn't call name. This was Brogad. He never called no name. He didn't say whether it was reggae or dancehall, but he made a reference to the music, right? And the type of music and the messages that is affecting
Mm-hmm.
the country. And he then said, you have people like Chronics that don't do those type of music and stuff like that. And I mean, automatically right there, when you hear that, you start to think of dancehall, right? And you start to think of the messages that comes out with dancehall. So you start to think of all the negative messages and stuff like that. But once again, I go to say you have some dancehall tune that's just about party, just get lit, have fun and all of that. But
Mm-hmm.
those are not necessarily the ones that we're highlighting, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have an artist like um let's say a ching ching, or you have those party artists, and them are not the ones them where that will be
Mm-hmm.
prominently
Mm-hmm.
being played, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or prominently being the ones that where they're the ones who we're hearing prominent are the ones who is talking about the stuff that for many is a day-to-day stuff in Jamaica. The next thing that I wanted to say is there is a difference with the promotion and the marketing, right? I do feel as if there is a sense of aggressiveness when it comes to dancehall artists, right? Dancehall artists, they're just so willing to just do certain things, as opposed to, and I see reggae artists doing it more now, but they are just so aggressive with how they attack. They will perform in a club, they will do a pop-up, they will do let's say certain appearance or walkthrough, they will do certain things, they will go and as opposed to a reggae artist now, it's with their band, it's a little bit of a slower thing and the approach to it, right? So I do see some differences there also, as the way as marketing and the aggressiveness of it as well.
Yeah, I think well, as you say that, artists, and you kind of mentioned Kabaka's career in terms of this slow build, even when you look back on some of the other what are perceived as reggae artists. They tend to have a slower build over time, right? But I don't think anyone is coming into any scene right now just a bus out at the gate. Like, it takes a certain level of marketing and
Right.
or promotion of whatever song. One, it has to, the content has to be good. So whether we deem it as good or not, somebody deem it as good
That's
as
good.
to why it gets popular. And I
Mhm.
think there are a lot of songs that I will listen to and I dance, but me not meds pan them. I don't listen to them every
Sure.
day or whatever. But I
Right.
hearing the like hearing songs in a dance hall, in a street dance versus a club dance versus, a day party, like those are completely different
Different.
vibes.
That's true.
And the reaction you get playing what that same song in those three different settings, it can be completely different. So I think there's a lot of staging that happens with even
That's
just one song, let alone a catalog of songs and I think artists are releasing songs in numbers that are like constant. And I read an article that, that's the wave and that's how you remain relevant.
right.
Um, but I'm still not sure if that's completely true or not. I don't know. I don't have an answer. I don't actually have an opinion.
And I don't know. But I do know it is true. Um, and I think the spike probably has been because of COVID-19, right? Um, Once again, it goes back to the consuming of music. So there was an article, and then I had a meeting about this where they were talking about the fact that no longer do we hop in the car to go to the gym or sitting in at the gym with our playlist playing music and stuff like that. Like, we're all home, right? And that's it. So the events that we used to take, or the actions that, the events that we used to do in our day-to-day life, and then consume our music or put together, our music, is not the same anymore. So we're just home and music is just flooded, right? And we become, in order to feed our attention, right? Especially if you're a music lover or this is your favorite artist, in order to feed your attention, they got to keep giving you something, right? Because
Hmm.
they can't show you that they were at this event or that they're going to be here or that you can listen to their song on this, like, or you're creating your playlist for the gym or for, work or in the office or stuff like that. So our lifestyle has changed, which then now the way that our artists communicate or work with us, the fans, has also changed. Hence why they're saying that they're just giving you music such at a rapid speed.
Hmm.
um I see that it has worked for some, but is it something that's gonna last? I don't know. I don't know if it's gonna last.
Yeah, I don't have that answer either. I'm enjoying it just because, like you said, me the boat. I'm a yard.
Right.
I'm a want ear new music when I want ear new music. So I'm enjoying it for the time being. And like you said, that's just a personal preference in terms of how you want to listen. Do you want to listen? Um, but I think what's important in terms of your position in the music industry, you're really kind of, bridging the gap between that last generation and this next one. What do you think? How can consumers and media kind of bridge that, come along on the bridge, on crossover? Because I think that's a bigger challenge than the artist. I think the artists actually understand what they want to do and where they want to go. Everyone isn't receiving it, and hence why we have a lot of the discussions that we do have.
Mhm.
But at the same time, where there, like you said, where there is good music, why is that not being exposed? It's like we're not taking enough people on the bridge with
Mhm.
us, because it's not just coffee. It's not just chronics. It's
Exactly.
not just, there are people like, and not only that, like I'm in my Instagram and I'm like, oh, I don't know who this is. I don't know who this is. I don't, and then like I'm finding new artists and new songs every day, but I don't put myself in that because I'm always looking for new artists just because
Right.
of the position that I'm in. I
Mhm.
don't know if consumers are necessarily doing the same thing. And consumers of a certain age are definitely not doing that.
Mhm.
So I think a lot, but they're the I me not lie, I them I complain the most because you know that they just come from an era, but it's just like
And
you
them
guys
just
have already
over.
grown into what you like as a person. That's
Yeah.
just your personality, but that does not mean that. And believe it or not, I feel like these young kids, it doesn't matter how raunchy the lyrics are, them still draw for the other side too. More than we did.
Mhm.
Because, you know, I think they understand the differences and the nuances between both genres. So
Right.
they turn up to one and they meds to another.
Okay.
So I don't know. What do you think people can do? That was my
I
question.
mean, I definitely feel that, as mentioned, talk about the good, talk about what you like, right? But then there must be some youths around. There must be someone within your presence that you can just enjoy a moment with. Here, have that conversation, with someone. Like, for instance, I use my son as that person to just kind of get in tune to what he's listening to, what he likes. And for those who, if we don't, and you just don't even feel like doing that, the most I can say is, once again, just share what you like, right? The more you share, the more people that they see, the more diverse that they see, I think others will do it. I remember artists saying, yeah, but when I sing a certain type of song, it gets no traction, right? No one talks about it. But as soon as I sing something else, that's the one that people run with. So it's just showing that they would, if that is what's going to pay you, but I think it's just the majority not talking about good music. And I would ask that everyone, before we say something, if we're going to say something, what's wrong with something or wrong with the music, back it up and say something was good. At least that's what I'm gonna ask, is make sure you have something for each bad, look for something good too.
All right. On that note, I have my rapid fire question them.
Mm-hmm.
Ready for you. All
Mm-hmm.
right. If you could pick a song to represent Ronnie as a person, what song would that be?
Man, that changed all the time.
Well, what mood you in today?
Can I pick more than one?
All right, Miggy Ablai.
So I posted yesterday, it was Beat Them Bad by Buju.
I love that song there.
So that's one. And the other one is Believe by Kabaka.
Okay,
Right?
that's a good
I
pick.
think the two of them kind of, although they're different, but they have that same message in a way. It's like, yo, so that's what it be. Meet them bad and believe.
Red Stripe or Guinness?
Red Stripe.
Ackee and saltfish with dumpling or breadfruit?
Dumpling.
In terms of your style, you have a thing for shoes. I'm gonna assume that's your thing because every time I see you, the shoes them nice. What is your favorite styling item that you
So that has changed, and it's sneakers, but
sneakers?
it has to be kind of funky in a sense or coordinated. So I'm loving um all one loose rompers or track suits, but they're
Mhm.
kind of like either the tie-dye ones or the, sweat material, and some dope sneakers, right? Some high top ones or things like that. So that's where I'm at right now. And I think the COVID cousins.
Yeah, my shoes they must sit down and collect
I'm
those
telling you,
somebody. Me no know when me I go
I
wear
need
them
to practice
again.
up. I'm gonna know if we can't even walking at them on my foot still.
I had a few more. Hold on once again. Style icon. Someone who inspires you from a style perspective.
Wow, that's a good question. Not a so well, I mean, I don't know. I've been following fashion addicts
Mhm.
um just because they're well versed, right? And the stuff that they pick is really about the person giving it off, because you know what I mean. So I've been following them, but not sure as far as if I had to have a specific stylist. Oh my God,
Stylist or celebrity, doesn't matter.
Rihanna. Yeah.
Megan,
Mhm.
we love her.
Everything.
Yeah, she kind of has that vibe where she can pretty much get away with
Everything. And I'm
everything.
telling you, that's what gives me a confidence that, yo, I'm in a business. What am I gonna wait? Like, yo, the other day she have on her silk boxers, and I'm like, yeah, silk boxers, like everything that she puts on, but it's really her.
It's
That,
her. Yeah.
yeah.
I
Hmm.
think there people are drawn to her personality, her persona, but
Yes.
I think that's her persona and her personality for
Yeah.
me feel organic, and I think that's why so many
Hmm.
people are attracted to her. And I think she does that really well through her style
Style.
too. And it's so funny when you think back to upon the replay, we weren't even sure if she was going to be
Right?
past that album, and it was a big question in the industry at the time.
Yeah.
And to see her growth has just been super phenomenal. She's like the epitome of, all right, y'all can talk about whatever y'all want, but I'm gonna
What?
do whatever I want.
Yep.
And it worked out in her favor, so I'm really happy about that. So um what advice would you give to someone coming up who wants to be a publicist and or work in the field of entertainment? um Inspire the youths them. Not that I know who's listening
Um,
or not, but
I would
you can't
say
inspire me still,
try try to do, depending on, okay, so I would say depending on what stage you are in school, I would say first thing, do as many internships as you can. Networking is so important. I wasn't one to really network. I was very, within my bubble. I was afraid. I was afraid to actually network and for people to actually see the person and the name. And then because I was just afraid of scandals, or people will probably say, yeah, man, Ronnie cheated. I was just afraid of what people may say. So I kept myself very sheltered. And I think because of that, it may have taken just a little bit longer um, to really blossom, right? Financially as well, than it probably would have if I was more bubbly and more outgoing. So I
Mhm.
would say network. Try to do as many internships as possible. And depending on what side of PR that you're going into, one that I'm looking to hopefully branch off this year would be more in corporate. So still remaining, but going into corporate. But just be mindful and educate yourself as much as possible
Mhm.
in that field that you're in. And don't be afraid to, have a niche, perfect that area of PR that you want to be in.
Last question. I think everyone is always a student of the game. What are you learning right now? What's something new that you're learning
Um,
or have learned recently?
so and I don't know, I recently learned content, right? Everybody wants content, everybody wants content. Um, so I can actually utilize knowing that everybody is looking for content is just the way that it's presented. And I say that because yeah, I knew that my clients or would probably need a, interview or placement, but they need content. The newspapers, the television, bloggers, everybody. So it's a full circle. Everyone needs content. So how do you build that partnership? Don't just look for your client, but also look for them too. So there's no problem having a check-in with somebody. Your client may not be doing anything at that moment, but have a check-in with, the editor or a vlogger or a blogger, whatever, and see, hey, how is it going? What's up? What are you doing? And see how you can assist, right? Because everyone needs content. So that's something that I am more aware of.
Okay. Well, thank you, Ronnie. This was
You
fun.
too. It was.
And always insightful. I'm glad you were able to be a guest on the podcast. It was fun.
Finally.
Well,
I'm my fault.
nothing before it's time.
Yeah.
Okay, you have
Thank you.
perfect timing, so I appreciate you, and that's it. Until next time,
Yeah.
later, my peeps.
All right. Bye.